it's Aaron from the Better Way Alliance. Before we get to your video, make sure that you go to the info section below, sign up for our newsletter, and follow us on Instagram at Better Way Alliance. Enjoy the video.
Well, we're so excited to kind of be invited and present this content today. We were introduced to the Better Way Alliance through kind of a mutual contact in our network who thought that we'd just be a really great partner for one another. And we had the chance to get to know Aaron and Liliana and more about the organization. And we're just super thrilled because there's a lot of values alignment between the folks that find their way to the Better Way Alliance and with Tandem and the work that we're passionate about doing. So today we're diving into sustainable cash flow being one of those real underpinning pieces to building a sustainable business. There's all sorts of different ways to have impact, but to really keep that impact going, you need that financial health and cash flow being one of the big pieces of that. So we'll take a peek at the agenda, and it's a pretty light agenda. So it's a two-part focused agenda today. The first half, which we're going to try to just go through in about half an hour, is some cash flow optimization strategies, followed by a Q&A. So I'm going to do the first half, Tania's going to do the second half, and the Q&A is really just for you to bring your questions, anything that you have to the table for us to chat about and give you support around. We're based in Vancouver, kind of on the other side of the country here, and we're based on the lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. We're really passionate about trying to decolonialize business and bring Indigenous practices into business around truth and reconciliation, call to action number 92. So just an area that we're really passionate about. We've got some community agreements that come from the Social Ventures Institute community, I think, Tania. We just offer these up for you to bring into your organizations as well. They're just some really great baselines for how to be in community with one another. Tania, do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about?
Happy to. Well, thanks for inviting us, Aaron and Liliana, to this conversation. My name is Tania Lowe. I am the CEO and co-founder of Tandem Innovation Group. Tandem Innovation Group was born out of an entrepreneurial experience of being an entrepreneur and going through the journey of creating a company, growing it, expanding it, pivoting it, finding capital to make things, make something that hasn't been done before really show up in a different way. And so those relationships create a little bit about why we do the business that we do. Fast forward, we are a group of 350 consultants across the country, where we at Tandem matchmake them with companies that are looking for fractional talent as they build their businesses. My own personal journey has been as an entrepreneur first. I spent a lot. I was the publisher of Momentum magazine, a digital first media company that focused on the storytelling of people who are captivated by using bikes as part of their life. We've now moved on to create Tandem Innovation Group, where we have worked with over 250 companies in our short 7-year lifetime, building them from scratch, optimizing them, helping them raise capital, and really starting from there to cross-pollinate people and build some resilient businesses. So that's a little about me. I'll pass it back to Renee.
Yeah, thank you, Tania. Yeah, it's pretty incredible to think in that time, like how many businesses Tandem's been a part of, which was pretty fun. I joined Tandem about a year and a half ago as their managing director, kind of in that fun place between working with the two co-founders, Tania and Sean, and the day-to-day operations of the business. My background prior to joining Tandem was 15 years in a Canadian environmental engineering firm, kind of in the archaeology and biology side of things for quite a long time. And then in an archaeology consulting firm for a little bit before joining Tandem. So lots of kind of consulting background, but in that also a lot of exposure to business and cash flow, and also studying business in school. So Ali Reza, who just joined us as well, is one of my alumni at BCIT. So super nice to see you and excited to have you here. I'll hand it to Tania. I think you kind of dipped in a bit about Tandem, but maybe you want to talk a little bit about the network. And
Absolutely. So here's a beautiful image. What Renee has helped me put together, which is a little bit about how we work here at, or how I see, and I think many of the people who join our network see how we can make things happen with a strong ecosystem. So this is a nod to Mycelium. We're here to share information, and if you feel like that information you can do something with it, you'll run with it, and vice versa. If you have things to share, you never know who will pick it up and do something with it and cross-pollinate it and make the ecosystem a little bit more connected and more resilient along the way. So that's a little bit about Tandem and our way of sharing.
that's great. Thank you. So we'll dive right into some of the strategies. The first slide that we'll look at next is really just a review of some of the basics. So we'll just touch on that for just a quick moment. So I was told that most of the folks that connected to the Better Way Alliance they already kind of have a cash flow sort of system in place. They've got their cash flow plan and they're working on it. So this is just a little bit of that cyclical review process. So it's not a one and done. Like a cash flow is something that you're always updating, looking, comparing against, also taking a look at the business model, the mission, vision, and values, and just doing that constant assessment. So there's a little bit of a weekly connect, monthly, quarterly, and then annually, kind of that big picture look. So kind of tying that into the strategic planning process. So we won't stay too long on that because that's probably just review for everyone. We'll dive into receivables. So with the receivables side of things, again, a lot of basics here. So as we go, some of the content that we'll get into, we'll kind of dig a bit deeper. This is a lot of kind of common knowledge, but it's always just good reminders for prompt invoicing, discount terms where you can offer them just to get cash coming in the door, especially if you're trying to line that up with payroll cycles, which might be bi-weekly. Implementing clear credit policies for those that might be purchasing from you. So maybe that applies, Lisa, in your case. You've got people who are using you as a supplier. And then following up on overdue invoices promptly. We like to kind of say, like, I feel like once something goes past 90 days, I mean, as everybody here knows, the longer it kind of drags on, the harder that becomes to collect. So being prompt and on top of it is really key, particularly right now in our economy.
Sorry, the Zoom allowing for me to mute and unmute is funny
Oh,
spot
it's
when I
it's
share
up
the
at the
screen, so
top.
I
Yeah.
apologize. I wanted to add a little bit something there,
Yeah.
especially a lot of in the type of companies that we are working in. A lot of them are extremely thoughtful about working with local suppliers and local customers, and they might be of different sizes, and so it's kind of important to just right size your arrangement with and just have some clarity of where your customers and your suppliers are at in their own entrepreneurial journey. We might be the first ones always to like work with brand new companies that are doing mission value first, and they might also have their own entrepreneurial journey, finance journey that's happening for them. So it's really fantastic to take the time to get to know your customers and your suppliers so that you can be in relationship with them. Because if they are struggling, then it can create pressure for you and vice versa. So to have those deeper conversations with your manufacturer or your service providers, really understand where they're at so that you can collectively create a little bit of customization if needed, or actually acknowledge that it might not be the right time for the needs you collectively have. And that's really okay too. It's mostly, you don't want to get there 90 days out. You want to get there early and have that understanding. And maybe you start the relationship smaller so you can get there and develop what's needed to make that a strong relationship. But it also is a fantastic opportunity to get to know who you're working with, and they're not just a invoice or a bill in your accounting system.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to the next piece that we're going to just touch on is optimizing payment terms. So what Tania was saying there, it is truly, this whole process is really about relationships, and it's very relational. And I think sometimes that part is missed in like the financial jargon. It can be really easy to just see, oh, do this, do that. But really, it is a relational process and communicating with folks. So we'll just take a look at the next slide, which has there's a lot going on here, and we'll share the deck with people after, so you don't have to take notes or anything like that. But if you've got suppliers that you're working with for your raw materials or whatever your inputs are, so this works on both sides. Either you are a supplier or you're utilizing suppliers. It's really a balancing act of trying to push for payment terms that are most optimal for you, while also acknowledging, as Tania was saying, where they're at and what they can kind of withstand within their business. So if you can you have a conversation with folks about moving, if they're generally charging you net 30, can you shift that to net 45? Is that something that can happen? Can you shift that? Net 60 might be pushing that a bit far, but just to share, is there some room you can play with there? Seasonal terms, and we're going to dip into seasonality a bit more as we go. But really looking at the seasonality of your business, and then trying to adjust payments maybe to when you've got more cash coming into the business. Progressive payment terms, so paying in installments, paying on milestones, which are kind of more common in certain industries than others. Consignment terms, where you pay for goods after you're sold. So there's risks in negotiating payment terms if you don't have those strong relationships with suppliers. They might view it as a lack of commitment to the partnership, or it might be loss of certain discounts. So it's just like approaching it delicately, I think, is the important part.
I think I would add treating yourselves as partners.
Yeah.
Knowing what your edges are and where there's a little bit of comfort allows them to have streamline in their cash flow too. So that conversation is super, super important. We saw that with COVID.
Yeah.
with anybody who had any supplies coming from overseas. What did that look like? We saw deposits have happened to stretch out a lot more, your minimum order quantities going up, and you really had to stretch that cash that you do have just to keep your supplier in business so that you actually have product to sell later on as well. So there's a lot of nuance and thoughtfulness to that relationship building, and I think we might sometimes not go there fast enough, and I think that's an opportunity lost if we don't do that there.
Yeah, it's like, how can you make something like that a win-win, Yeah, it's definitely having the conversations. And if you can build those relationships so that they're really strong ahead of when you really have to like lean on it. And, we've got some suggestions here for, again, on if you're doing invoicing in your business, if you can offer discounts on if the invoice is paid within a certain amount of time. So the idea here is really to shorten that window, which might be a 30-day collection, 45, 60, whatever your standard payments terms are, and bring cash in faster, on a faster cycle. Taking a look to see like if you're offering that 1% discount, that 2% discount, but you're able to get that cash faster and you're not having to dip into loans or other sorts of things, like that might be a valuable kind of cost to take on the invoice. Yeah, Tania, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that, but
I feel like everything has to do with the size of the organizations that you're working with, and diversifying your terms. Not everything being the same. That goes to your customers as well, but also your suppliers. There are some that have a little bit more maturity, and they can be a part of the financing strategy. And others that aren't, and some of them are there to kind of promote your growing as well. So work with those partners that see you being a customer, really adding value to what they want to do more of as well.
There's all sorts of interesting financing options out there, some traditional, some non-traditional. So this is just a big laundry list of different types of things that are out there. I would say, I did a little bit of a deep dive and was searching for some of the top hits, like when you do an online search of some of these terms, but it's definitely kind of proceed with caution. I would say, like these avenues are available to you, but you want to do your due diligence as a business owner, as a finance person in a business, because they're obviously also they're in the business of loaning out money, obviously to make money as a business for themselves. Some of these like non-finance type institutions that are out there that do kind of outside of the box lending, but they're out there. You can take out loans against your accounts receivable. You can do that. There are banks that offer that. There are all sorts of interesting things out there. So I would say if you are in the market where you need a bit more wiggle room, these are some options that are out there that you might want to explore. And there's tons of notes in the slide deck about these different types of credit, loans, financing. So I won't read through all of that, but you can dive in if you're like, oh, I'm curious about factoring, or I'm curious about supply chain finance. Lots of interesting stuff there. This one's pretty basic. It's just like your household budgeting. You've got a couple levers. You've got kind of the payment terms levers, obviously bringing more cash into the business, but the other part is managing expenses. So taking a look and seeing if there's anything that can be eliminated. Sometimes that's just, we kind of go along in business and we kind of gather subscriptions and things and stuff, and you're kind of rolling along. but you're not necessarily looking back and saying like, oh, do we really need that anymore? You know, I feel like I do that a lot with my like online streaming services where I've got Netflix and Apple TV, and then at a certain point I'm like, do I need all of these? So just a little reminder to go back and reevaluate and look for any opportunities that you can to kind of trim back.
And you can also have long-term conversations with your providers and chat about whether or not things are changing. A lot of times there's an opportunity to let them know that you're maybe not necessarily needing the service anymore, or you're using it less, or you're a long time person. Maybe there's an affiliate program that you can help support, bringing them more business, and that kind of brings you, maybe that adds a little bit of value to you being a customer, and there's something there too. So being helpful where you can to support your own ability to negotiate what your payment, what your spend is with some of your suppliers.
That's
Nobody
great.
wants to lose you as a customer also.
Yeah, that's came up recently where I was working with an organization that was trying to figure out whether they should keep their Zoom account or not. And then somebody was saying, you know, if you cancel, like they'll often come back and try to offer you a discounted rate or something just to kind of keep your business. So I'm not saying to go cancel everything like Tania said. It could just be sending an email to your account manager, your contact person there, and just opening up the conversation to see what might be done. This one's on inventory, not applicable to every business. It depends what sort of business you're in, but the first slide is kind of interesting because one of the ways of managing this is like just in time inventory practices, which going into the pandemic, super popular, a lot of people doing this, particularly to preserve cash. And then there were all the challenges that came out in the supply chain with the pandemic, as Tania pointed to earlier. I would say like the jury is still out as to, you know, there's two sides of the coin here, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. So one is like, just in time, terrible, don't do it, we all learned. Wall Street Journal commentary saying it's a bit more nuanced, you know, we learned a lot, but it's not, we're not chucking just in time out the door. But it really has to be, does that make sense in your business? And if that's something you don't currently implement and you're looking to implement, there's a lot out there around kind of lessons learned and how to do it right or better, more effectively. So then we want to look at some of the seasonality, which is a lot of businesses do have a seasonal factor to them. So we want to just look at, you can do that by looking at the financial data in your business to see where those fluctuations are if you don't already know. And then that can be things like holidays, weather, industry trends, consumer behavior. These are all different patterns that can create kind of some seasonal variations in your business. So you want to take a look and make sure that your cash flow plan is incorporating that seasonality, and extending your forecast ideally up to 24 months if you can. So you've got your 12-month, but can you push it out just to give yourself a little bit more of a window? Then build in a seasonal buffer. So accumulating cash reserves when you have those peak seasons to help you cover expenses during your seasons when things are slower. This is, yeah, the last little point I was going to make on this slide, and then I'll just hand it over to you if you've got anything to add, is one of the pieces, and this is like a plug for probably all sorts of fractional work. Tandem, of course, has a bunch of fractional folks, but just like we talked about planning inventory levels, staffing is another big big piece that encompasses a lot of money that's tied up in business. So it's great. We definitely want those key positions, those important positions. They're going to help a company to grow, but also exploring fractional work if there's a need for some technical expertise or some support, some extra set of hands, but rather than bringing in somebody full-time, just looking for that fractional person who can dip in and provide some support, particularly maybe when it's busy. So we have that right now. We're doing some support for a construction company. They're super busy in the summer. They're like, we need a fractional resource that can be with us in the summer and then kind of scale back in the winter. So we found somebody who was able to step in and kind of lend them a hand. I don't know if there's anything on seasonality that you want to add.
Oh, well, I think on this topic, it's not a conversation that many people have early on, which is where do we want to be in terms of how much cash to have on reserve? Are we a 3-month company, a 6-month company, an 18-month company, or a 3-year company? What does that look like? And it kind of requires everybody on board to understand what's going to be needed to choose what that goal looks like, because you're going to make different decisions internally about where you spend your money, where you invest it, but knowing collectively the cash flow goals, and really challenging yourselves to know why you want to have those specific goals. Is it because you're running up a clock on your going to market first? Do you have competitors that you need to get to market first? Or are you in a business where it's a slow roll? One quarter we want to just extend it another week. Next year I'd like to get it to another 3 more weeks. Is it a slow roll? And knowing what that looks like helps you and your team make better, more aligned decisions on cuts or growth. Because if you cut too much, it's hard to grow. And knowing where you all want to be will make everybody's decision collectively a little bit stronger, and you can get there together faster.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to see, like, we were just talking to a business today that's like, she runs very tight. I think she said she has a 2 to 4 month burn rate in her business. And she was saying, I just go out, I'm like constantly trying to get sales. That is what I do. If I just keep bringing sales in the door. But yeah, figuring out what that comfort zone is for your business is critical. This is the last kind of portion before we offer a few final tips and open it up to Q&A. This next slide is just really about how to position yourself to be able to best access some of the financing options out there. So this is always just good stuff to have, know, and do ahead of time, so that when you need to pull that lever, when you need to go there, you're already well prepared. So maintaining good financial records, establishing a positive credit history, building that up, selecting the right banking partner or the right finance partner, and building a strong relationship with that bank. You may have to offer collateral personal guarantees, showing a stable cash flow. So we get a lot of folks coming to us saying, hey, I need to go to a lender. They're asking for these sorts of documentations. Like, I need some help pulling this together. So that kind of ties into the maintaining of good financial records and being able to tell that story of your cash flow. Exploring different government programs. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and sometimes the government's like shoveling out more money than they can connect it to people. It kind of depends. Some grants and things are easier to access than others. CDAP is one that's out there right now that they're really trying to get out there, but they're having a really tough time connecting businesses with that grant. So if you've got 500,000 in revenue in the past 3 years, it's a $15,000 grant, which is pretty.
Also, I think once you get the grant, you also have access to a pot of BDC zero interest loan of up to $50,000. It is what you are automatically able to access once you get the grant too. So it's not your general BDC loan where there is a guarantee and an interest rate. This one is $50,000 with a 0% interest. So something to access and I would want to add to this conversation about stacking your finance strategy. So when you're able to access one part of that stack, so I would say the stack is revenue, non-dilutive grants, and then non-dilutive debt and equity. So equity is potentially an investor, but it also could just be like you putting in some money that you can leverage other money for as well. But doing it all at the same time gives you a maximum opportunity to use that timing well, so that you have the most optimal balance sheet to showcase when you have that investment in. That's the easiest time to leverage more debt. And it's also a great opportunity to leverage a lot of government non-dilutive grants or 0% loans, because they're wanting to share the risk. So you're taking this opportunity to identify that you're sharing the risk amongst all the different parties that want to see you succeed. But if you can do it in concert, you can save a little bit of time going into the future, but you're also just spreading out the amount of money that you're able to access in one time. So that's one thing I challenge folks to look at is, if you're going for one, go for all three and see if you can make that stretch a little bit longer for you. And again, spreading out the risk amongst the different parties and their different stakeholders that want to see you succeed.
Yeah, your finance stack. I think the last slide, just some final tips. These were just little things that we've kind of touched on. So monitoring KPIs. So looking at some of those ratios, some of those metrics in your business, particularly on the finance side, so that you can have a sense of your performance over time. Like, how is this changing? Are we still in a good zone? Looking at your budget versus actuals with your forecast. So what did you forecast? What actually happened? And just keeping an eye on that. Creating multiple scenarios. If anybody has time to, sometimes you have your one scenario and you're like, okay. But if you have time, you've got your best case, your worst case, your most likely, so that you kind of have those to lean on. Maintaining an emergency fund, automating processes where you can. The streamlining cash flow communications really about keeping the communication channels open. So if you've got a finance team or people that are supporting you on the finance side, are you having regular meetings with the stakeholders for your finance team? Make sure that they understand their part in the cash flow management. Do the people in your team understand how their decisions impact cash flow? If you have external stakeholders like lenders, investors, going back to what Tania was sharing earlier, it's really about that relationship. So it's always better to be clear, transparent, kind of communicating with them ahead of them coming to you looking for that information, because you're just trying to really show that you're trying to maintain that trust, that confidence, and providing timely updates is just going to give them a lot more confidence that you have it in hand. Seek professional advice if you need to. Sometimes it can be hard and lonely to go at it alone. So somebody that you can bounce things off of or seek help if you need. And yeah, just wanted to open it up to questions. Anything kind of come up as we were going through that material that you want to know more about, or things that are coming up even in your business, or Amanda, the businesses that you support that you could really benefit from just throwing out some questions that we might be able to help with?
I think especially when it comes to the financing options, that's a really important piece of this for a lot of businesses. And like a lot of the businesses that are in our network tend to be smaller, like 3, 5, 7 employees. It's harder for them to build up a credit history because so much is often done in cash when they're starting out. So like, how would you recommend a business build up credit history, preferably as quickly as possible using the tools available?
I think part of it often is it takes a couple of years, and you are really building off your own personal credit history when you're starting a business. It's part of the inequality that is out there for starting a business. I'll name it right there. Not everybody shows up with 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 a starting point above ground in terms of having a little bit of elasticity to fall into if things go wrong. A lot of people don't have assets just yet when they start businesses, and so many people don't start businesses because they don't have that asset. And I not necessarily think I think we're missing out on really great people running businesses just because we don't start all in the same place. So I'll call that out right now. That being said, people are seeing that, and that's why I think you can have conversations with stakeholders that want to see that change. And so I would say most businesses need about $100,000 or $200,000 to start. So if you're getting started, seek out those stakeholders that want to see your type of business show up more. So that's a lot of like telling your impact story, talking about the SDGs, the 17 UN SDGs that have been named as really calling cards that need to be addressed more in our businesses, and being very thoughtful that, you know, sharing that might open up some doors for you to find starting funding, whether that be governmental, whether that be philanthropic, whether that be friendly funds from just folks that are out there going, I want to see what this looks like. I don't have a lot to start with, but you can potentially see how to cobble together $100,000 to $200,000 to get going to start with, so that you give yourself some runway to set yourself up to showcase your thesis of your business. Barring that, most people have already started. Let's just say we've already started. We're already in year 2, and you probably used up your credit card, and now you're getting another credit card to pay off the last credit card, and that is not an unfamiliar story. And how do you get out of that cycle? It has everything to do with focusing on your cash, and paying back those loans, those lines of credit, even in bite sizes, so that you're constantly moving the money. That it's not latent. Like, the credit history has everything to do with you being able to pay it back. So start with small amounts and practice paying it back, and go for a little bit more as you develop those relationships. And if those aren't the right partners, seek the right partners. There's different banking institutions that have different goalposts in terms of diversifying their clientele and who they're supporting, and really push them on it. push people on what they want to see in the world, and how what you're doing fits into that thesis, and develop that relationship from small to big. It's little steps along the way. So I don't know if I addressed your question exactly, Erin, but I feel like just knowing that it's not an easy feat to get past your first 3 years, and really leveraging all the goodwill. And you kind of only get to do that once, to be honest. Like you got to throw those fundraisers at the beginning, and you've got to find that kind of free money to get started, so that you don't start in a hole along the way. And I feel like some folks might know how to properly make sure they pay themselves as employees. So part of credit history has everything to do with your own credit history not dying on the stake of building your business. And a lot of folks will say, look, I don't want to pay myself until I start making money in the business. I think that might be one of the first places that you want to leverage in the right way, which is pay yourself, but lend the money back, so that you don't end up with bad credit history, that you don't end up with like a T4 that doesn't show enough revenue for you to get a loan yourself, or have bad credit on your own terms. So work with a payroll specialist, pay your taxes on time, don't get behind there, but also know that up to $14,000 is tax. You don't have any income tax on that anyway, so you might as well pay yourself that. And if you need to lend that back to the company, well, you're moving money again, and you're showing that you are actively the lender in the company, and that can tell a different story to who you're bringing on to as partners in the company as well. So maybe that's one very specific tip I really ask that all new entrepreneurs employ, is like, make sure that your own credit doesn't get washed up in the activities as well.
I think that's a good response, and I'm just going to summarize it by saying, like, essentially 3 things: keep your money moving, and the third one. However that happens, because if it's sitting stagnant, it's going to look like there isn't any activity. So when it continues to move, there's activity in the business. Even if it might be perceived as artificial, there's still something coming in, there's something going out.
Lisa, what sort of, obviously you don't have to get into specifics, but what sort of challenges are you finding? Like, I feel like I'm noticing people are kind of becoming like a bit slower to pay. It's like there's this recessionary kind of sentiment out there.
Yeah, for sure. And the craft beer industry, where most of our customers are, is changing quite a lot. So what you were saying before about relationships, like, is huge, has been huge. Like, I feel like our customers who are struggling have been not ordering as much, as opposed to ordering and not paying, which is like so much better, right? than running up their invoices knowing they can't pay. So I feel like that is because they know us, right? They're being sort of kind of more honest with us in a way, right? So I think the relationships that we have with our customers has been absolutely massive. I think like we are, near the top of people that they pay, of their vendors. We're smaller, we're not a big supplier. So yeah, the relationship part is huge. And how you were saying before about different size of customers, like we definitely have, you probably have brewery customers as well. Like we have, tiny folks and now bigger breweries. So that kind of tailoring is happening very ad hoc, I think, right now. It's just kind of like, me being like, oh, I should approach that person differently, or I know that person, I know they're small, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I know that's one piece that we talk about as well too, which is like not as much cash flow planning, but connected. It's like diversifying our businesses enough on the customer side to have resiliency. Because if you're kind of too far to one side, it's really tough. But yeah, it's like we don't want to all work for like all the big breweries, all the big things. But can we find like this nice mix where we're just like we would diversify our investments? Yeah.
Yeah, that does help for sure.
Yeah, Amanda, what about you? You're in all sorts of businesses. Yeah, what's
So
coming up?
I just started my own business, so I'm seeing a different side of it now. So
Yeah.
one thing that I'm seeing is that I have people coming to me with a few years of work, and then I'm getting it done, giving a heads up on the size of the invoice.
Mhm.
And I'm getting a lot of, oh, I didn't know it was going to be that much to start. So I've been sitting on a few invoices like that. And then it's such a different industry to be in, like being so involved in the finances and seeing how long clients take to pay. And then sitting and knowing that I'm going to have to sit on that as well. So it's different, something that I'm definitely getting used to. That's why I decided to join this, to kind of see different perspectives and stuff.
Yeah, it is like it's tough when you're in that position where you're like holding this invoice and you're like, how like can I collect on it? Like I really want to, I really need to, but yeah. Tanya, I don't know if you have any insights there on like the receivable side.
I think you along the way learn better how to reduce how to create a little bit of awareness at the beginning of a relationship. We can sometimes not intentionally have misaligned timing on when things are due or what it's going to look like. Not everybody knows the shape of what the outcome will look like. So the more you can kind of create little stopping points so that along the way you can check in whether or not it's still feeling right. Like, what are you uncovering? Are you going down a rabbit hole that you and your client need to talk about before you go in the rabbit hole? Is it worth going in the rabbit hole? Sometimes we can show up with I think one of these characteristics of perfection that can drive us to maybe not identifying what doesn't need to be done. So there's a lot of to be said of we can reduce our time and energy spend by deciding what doesn't have the best return on investment in your time. And versus like it just has to be done this way. It has to be there's this part in finance or accounting that we talk about materiality. Making it perfect versus getting close, because it at the end of the day the exactness won't change the outcome. Is something universally known and aware of, and sometimes we might approach it, and certain personalities might approach it of like I just got to get it to zero. It has to be perfect, and that doesn't always serve the activity or the needs of what's there. So it's incumbent on us to kind of share is, do we all want to do this work? Do we all want to make this spend? Because it's my time as well. Like, and you might be better served using that time for something else. But it's a collective conversation with regular stopping points, not a go and talk to you in 90 days moment. It's a go, let's check in weekly, bi-weekly, until you have that trust and that rhythm that you're saying and hearing the same things. All these relationships have everything to do with like, I have this rhythm. You, I think, have the same rhythm, but maybe not. And once we're out of step and we don't have the opportunity to see that and have a conversation about it, it can divide us very quickly and kind of make that make what was a good start really hard to come back from. So I would say make little stopping points so that you're like, okay, I'm still on the right road. We're still on the right track, because I think we can move at the speed of trust, which is if we develop opportunities to learn that we can trust what we're hearing and seeing and doing, then we can work faster, because then I'll know, when you say this, that's what it means, versus when you say this, I thought you meant that. And that makes things speed up. So it is really that exercise of doing things together and checking in on each other sooner than later.
It's so delicate when you're in that new client relationship moment and you're getting to know each other, and particularly in consulting where they show up in bookkeeping and where they're like, everything's great, my books are totally in order, and you might scope something based on information that they're giving you, and then you kind of uncover that it's not quite as great as you thought it was going to be. But yeah,
that's what I get a lot.
the struggle is real, Amanda. The struggle is real. I know we're kind of coming up to time, and I just wanted to see if Ellie Reza had any questions. I know you think you're doing marketing consulting as well, but you'll have to remind me.
Hi, Renee. Thank you for having me, and then thank you for the invitation for this wonderful event. Yeah, I'm working as a business consultant at this moment, and helping businesses for their making their process and procedures more paperless, such as ERP system. So all the information you shared was perfectly great. I just want to also add that for this cash flow, situation, in the cash flow topic, we always also should put in the consideration about the impact of inflation. Yes, inflation is always in favor of debtor. So if when at this moment we have the high inflation, so it's better to get the good deal from the vendors with the longer period of time for payment, and try to get our invoice be cashed shorter period of time, even with smaller revenue, smaller benefit margin. So I just want to add it this piece to your wonderful pieces of information.
That's great. Yeah, thanks so much for adding that. Like the inflationary climate that we're in, and all of these different factors are definitely putting pressure on business. And I mean, there's a lot of resiliency out there, and but sometimes it feels like one thing after another, so hang in there, like know that you're part of a community of other entrepreneurs and business owners out there, and by having these sorts of events where we can just share information freely with one another and just help to I think that's where we get stronger, is by sharing little tips, tricks, whatever we can to help make each other more resilient. So I know that for Tania and myself, our doors are kind of always open. You can find us on LinkedIn, you can reach out. I'm sure Erin has our contact information. We'll share the slide deck with everyone as well. But we're all about like knowledge sharing. So anything that we can kind of put back into the ecosystem to help everybody thrive.
And make sure you leverage your community to tell them what you're selling so that they can help you find customers.
Yeah.
You never know where there's a customer looking for exactly what you're offering right in front of you. And I would say your new customers and new relationships are where you can also leverage your community for.
Yeah,
sometimes the community just wants to be asked. They just want to be asked, or they want some tools to be able to be able to support you. in some way that they can. So share what you're doing, and be that person in that community that, you know, gives everybody else in the community purpose.
We'll hand it back over to Aaron.
Yeah, thank you both. I still have 5 more questions, but I'll save those for my follow-up email. And yeah, I just wanted to thank you both again for putting this together. And I know that a lot of this is focusing on those really critical issues that many businesses are facing, especially around cash flow, especially around employee retention. The two are quite directly related. And you know, it's always good to hear from experts that have this capability to dive into it. And I know that I'm excited to send this out in our next newsletter, because I'm sure we'll get some questions about some of the ideas that you've presented today. But yeah, that's it. You know, I'm glad we were able to partner on this. The Better Way is constantly doing more and more of this kind of events where we're bringing our members in to do these kinds of expert engagement opportunities. And I know we've got a couple more coming up that I'm quite excited about, which we'll be announcing in a couple of weeks as well. And then going into next year, we're going to be doing more in-person events as well, across Canada. I get to fly all over the place and buy those carbon credits. So very much looking forward to getting back to Vancouver, seeing both of you in person, and then you know, getting to the rest of Canada to keep growing this positive momentum, because there is positive momentum for this kind of thoughtful business ownership. So thanks for advocating for it, everyone here, and thanks for being part of the membership to most of the people here. And everyone else soon.
Exactly. They're new champions.
Definitely. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah,
thank you so much. It was great. Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Farewell, everybody.
Bye.